Hey man, most men don't realize it, but when a woman wants to control the dynamic without ever admitting it openly, she doesn't chase you, she makes you chase her. And the way she does that is through subtle manipulation tactics designed to trigger your insecurities and spark your desire to prove yourself. She doesn't beg for your attention, she withholds hers. She doesn't directly ask you to pursue her. She creates just enough distance, just enough confusion, just enough emotional highs and lows that you feel compelled to close the gap. This is the silent game women play, not to openly pursue, but to manipulate the frame so you pursue harder than you ever intended. One of the most common tactics is selective attention. She gives you just enough validation to hook you, an intense look, a compliment, a flirtatious moment, but then she pulls back. She suddenly becomes busy. She takes longer to respond. She downplays her earlier enthusiasm. What does that do to you? It makes you question what changed. It makes you want to recapture that spark she gave you at the start. And so you lean in, you text more, you chase harder, because you're trying to get back the version of her she revealed only briefly. This push-pull dynamic isn't an accident. It's a calculated rhythm designed to keep you emotionally invested while she does less and you do more. Another manipulation tactic is comparison. She'll casually bring up other men, whether it's an ex, a coworker, or a friend who just gets her. She doesn't need to outright say you're not enough. She simply plants the seed of competition. Now, instead of staying grounded, you feel the urge to prove that you're better than the men she mentioned. You become more attentive, more available, more eager to demonstrate your value. But what you don't realize is that you've stepped into her frame. She's no longer proving herself to you, you're proving yourself to her. And once that shift happens, the chase becomes lopsided, and she holds the power. Then there's the tactic of manufactured scarcity. She makes herself appear rare, not by actually being rare, but by limiting her availability. She'll cancel plans last minute, delay her responses, or act like her schedule is overflowing. The goal isn't just to frustrate you, it's to condition you into seeing her time as more valuable than yours. And when you accept that frame, you begin rearranging your life to fit into her openings. Instead of her aligning with your world, you align with hers. And little by little, without even realizing it, you've become the one doing all the pursuing while she simply waits for you to prove your worth. But perhaps the most powerful manipulation tactic women use is emotional withdrawal. When you're doing well, being confident, focused, and nonchalant, she rewards you with affection. But the moment you slip, the moment you show neediness, the moment you reveal vulnerability without strength, she pulls back. She becomes colder, distant, less responsive. This sudden shift feels devastating because it forces you into a spiral of over-pursuit. You try harder to win back the affection she once gave freely. You double text, you call more, you plan bigger gestures, all in the hope of getting back to the warmth she showed you before. What you don't see is that she created this withdrawal on purpose, because the more unpredictable she becomes, the more you crave her validation. That craving turns you into the pursuer, while she simply sits back and watches you exhaust yourself. Another tactic that women use to make men over-pursue is what I call the mirage of vulnerability. At first, she'll let her guard down just enough to make you feel like you've unlocked a part of her that no one else gets to see. Maybe she shares a personal story. Maybe she hints at pain from her past. Maybe she reveals just enough softness that you believe she's giving you something rare. But here's the catch. She doesn't stay in that vulnerable state. The next time you talk, she may be cold, distant, or dismissive. And because you already tasted that hidden vulnerability, you chase harder to get it back. You tell yourself, I know the real her is in there somewhere. If I just try harder, she'll show me again. This yo-yo of intimacy and distance is one of the most powerful ways she hooks men, because it makes you feel like you're working toward a reward that is always just out of reach. Then there's the performance of indifference. Women understand that men are driven by the desire to win. When she acts indifferent, when she pretends she doesn't care whether you call or don't, whether you show up or disappear, it triggers a competitive drive inside you. You think, why doesn't she care? Most women would. I need to prove I matter to her. That thought alone is enough to pull you into the cycle of over-pursuit. You start sending longer texts, planning more elaborate dates, or offering more of your time, not because she's asking, but because her act of not caring makes you desperate to change her behavior. What you don't realize is that her indifference is a facade. She does care, but by pretending she doesn't, she gets you to do all the work of proving your value, while she maintains her position as the prize. Another common manipulation tactic is the weaponization of silence. Silence is powerful because it forces you to fill in the blanks. When she stops responding, when she suddenly grows cold, your mind doesn't rest. It creates stories. You wonder if she's upset, if she's losing interest, if she's seeing someone else. And because your imagination amplifies the fear of losing her, you start pursuing more aggressively, just to get reassurance. You break your own rules, you abandon your own standards, all because you can't tolerate the discomfort of her silence. And here's where the manipulation lies. She knows that silence doesn't have to last long to work. Just a few hours of distance, a few delayed replies, a few cold days, and suddenly you're the one investing triple the effort just to restore the connection. Let's not forget the illusion of competition. Women often create subtle triangles to make men feel like they're at risk of losing her. It might be a casual mention of another man who just gets her. It might be a guy she texts in front of you. It might even be an ex she swears she's just friends with. These aren't coincidences, they're deliberate triggers. They force you to shift from grounded to reactive. Instead of leading the dynamic, you start competing for her attention. You ask more questions, you become more possessive, you try harder to stand out, and in doing so, you prove to her that she doesn't have to invest heavily in you. She can simply pit you against an imaginary rival and watch as you do the work of proving yourself. The tragedy is that many men never realize this game is being played, and they end up chasing a woman who was never actually at risk of leaving. Perhaps the most insidious tactic is future faking. This is when she paints an emotional picture of what life with her could look like. She talks about trips you could take, the family you might build, the kind of partner she wants to be. In those moments, she gives you glimpses of an idealized future, and you buy into it. You start investing your time, energy, and emotions into someone who has no intention of following through on those visions. The more you believe in that future, the harder you pursue her in the present, because you don't want to lose the dream she dangled in front of you. And here's the cruel part. Once you're hooked, she no longer has to do the work. You're already chasing, already proving, already investing, while she sits back and benefits from your effort. And if she ever feels like you're slipping, she just drops another hint about the future, and the cycle begins again. One of the most overlooked manipulation tactics women use to make men over-pursue is what I call manufactured unpredictability. A man thrives on stability. When he knows where he stands, when he understands the rules of the game, he's calm and collected. But women who want to keep you chasing deliberately remove that clarity. One day she's affectionate, the next she's cold. One day she's complimenting you, the next she's criticizing you. One day she's posting about how much fun she's having with you, the next she's posting cryptic quotes that make you question her loyalty. This unpredictability destabilizes you, and when you're destabilized, you crave consistency. And because you want that stability back, you pursue harder, you reach out more often, you ask for reassurance, you try to fix whatever invisible problem seems to be pulling her away. What you don't realize is that she's not confused, she's strategic. By keeping you off balance, she guarantees that you invest more effort in trying to stabilize what she's deliberately shaking. Then there's emotional mirroring with withdrawal. This is when she starts off by matching your energy perfectly. She laughs when you laugh. She's enthusiastic when you're enthusiastic. She makes you feel like you found someone who finally gets you. That mirroring creates a powerful bond because it tricks your brain into believing she's aligned with you on a deep level. But just as you start relaxing into that connection, she pulls back. The messages slow down. The warmth cools off. The energy she once mirrored vanishes. And because your brain was trained to associate her with that perfect connection, you chase desperately to get it back. You think you've lost something real, but in truth, she never showed you the real her in the first place. She simply mirrored you long enough to make you addicted to the reflection. Once you're hooked, the withdrawal forces you into over-pursuit because you're not chasing her. You're chasing the version of yourself you saw reflected in her. Another manipulation tactic is the weaponization of jealousy. A woman who wants to control the dynamic knows that nothing destabilizes a man more than the idea of being replaced. So she drops subtle breadcrumbs to stoke your fear of competition. She laughs a little too long at another man's joke. She leaves comments under male friends' photos. She makes vague references to attention she's receiving from others. She's not outright cheating or disloyal. She's simply planting the idea that her attention isn't guaranteed. And that tiny seed of doubt makes you work harder to secure her. Instead of staying grounded, you start fighting ghosts, proving yourself against men who may not even exist in her orbit. The more insecure you feel, the more you pursue, and the more power she gains by doing less. And the cruelest part is this: she may not even want those other men, but she knows that the idea of them is enough to make you chase her more intensely. There's also the illusion of investment. This is when she gives you small tokens of effort, a quick text, a small compliment, a brief check-in, just enough to keep you believing she's interested, but she never gives enough to match what you're putting in. The imbalance grows slowly, almost imperceptibly. You start calling more often than she calls you. You initiate plans more than she does. You're the one arranging, paying, and showing up, while she contributes crumbs that feel like feasts because you're starving for her reciprocity. This illusion of investment works because it tricks you into thinking she's contributing, when in reality she's not. She's simply giving the bare minimum to keep you hooked while you pour in everything. And the moment you start noticing the imbalance, she throws in another small crumb, just enough to reset your hope and keep you chasing. Perhaps the most subtle but destructive tactic is the exploitation of your empathy. Women know that men who care will go to great lengths to fix emotional tension, so she fabricates or exaggerates problems, not to solve them, but to keep you engaged in solving her. She might act sad, withdrawn, or distant, and when you ask what's wrong, she says, "Nothing, I'm fine." That vagueness is intentional. It creates anxiety in you because you know something's wrong but can't address it directly. And so you start chasing, not her love, but her emotional state. You spend time, effort, and energy trying to soothe, repair, and win back her warmth. And every time you succeed, she withdraws again, restarting the cycle. It's not about resolving conflict. It's about keeping you emotionally entangled so that your entire focus stays on her. In this way, she manipulates your empathy into a leash, pulling you in every time she feels your attention drifting. Another manipulation tactic that makes men over-pursue is the art of mixed validation. She'll alternate between praising you and undermining you, between boosting your confidence and poking at your insecurities. One day she tells you how attractive you are, how much she enjoys your company, how different you are from other men. But the next day she makes a cutting remark about your appearance, your job, or your effort in the relationship. These contradictions keep you in a loop because you never know which version of her you'll get. The compliments feel like highs you want to relive, and the criticisms sting so deeply that you chase harder just to prove her wrong. Instead of walking away, you start performing, working overtime to earn back the positive version of her that you believe is hidden underneath the negativity. This keeps you trapped in a cycle of trying to earn what she deliberately withholds. Closely tied to this is conditional affection. When you do something she wants, whether it's buying her something, changing your behavior, or giving her more time, she rewards you with warmth and closeness. But the moment you deviate from what she desires, she becomes cold, distant, or even dismissive. This creates a powerful psychological conditioning known as intermittent reinforcement. Your brain begins associating her affection with compliance. You start chasing her approval by sacrificing your own boundaries and standards. The more you comply, the more she dangles affection like a prize, and without realizing it, you're no longer in a relationship. You're in a reward and punishment system where she pulls all the levers. That's why so many men end up drained, confused, and dependent in relationships where this tactic is at play. They think they're chasing love, but they're really chasing permission to feel loved. Another subtle yet devastating tactic is guilt manipulation. She frames your independence, your boundaries, or your natural masculine focus as neglect. If you spend time on your goals, she accuses you of ignoring her. If you maintain friendships or hobbies outside of her, she suggests you don't care enough. Over time, this guilt wears you down. You start over-prioritizing her to avoid the accusations, bending your life around her needs, and neglecting yourself in the process. What's happening here is a psychological shift. She convinces you that love means self-sacrifice, while she continues investing minimally. And because men are wired to protect and provide, guilt strikes deeply. You don't want to be seen as careless, so you overcompensate by giving more. She doesn't have to demand pursuit. You do it yourself, driven by the fear of failing her expectations. There's also emotional triangulation. She doesn't just use other men to make you insecure. She also uses your own emotions against you. For example, she'll accuse you of being too jealous or insecure when you call out her behavior, making you question your instincts. Or she'll flip the script during arguments, positioning herself as the victim even when she was the one pulling away. This leaves you doubting your own judgment, wondering if you're overreacting, and chasing clarity to fix what feels broken. When you're caught in triangulation, you stop trusting your gut and start outsourcing your self-worth to her approval. And once she has you in that state, she doesn't need to chase you. You'll chase her endlessly, trying to prove that you're not the insecure, jealous, or controlling man she paints you to be. Finally, one of the most dangerous manipulation tactics is emotional debt. She convinces you, directly or indirectly, that you owe her more than she gives you. Maybe she reminds you of the things she's done for you, no matter how small, framing them as sacrifices you should constantly repay. Maybe she paints herself as the only one who truly believes in you, using that illusion to make you feel indebted to her. The more you accept this framing, the more you over-pursue, because every time you feel like you haven't done enough, you try harder. The truth is, in healthy relationships, love isn't debt, it's exchange. But in manipulative dynamics, women use this sense of obligation as a leash. You stop asking what you're receiving, because you're too busy paying off a debt that was never real in the first place. Another tactic women often use to make men over-pursue is strategic vulnerability at key moments. She won't show her true self most of the time, but when she senses you're pulling away, she suddenly lets her guard down. She might cry in front of you, tell you she's been hurt in the past, or reveal just enough pain to make you feel like her protector. For a man, this awakens the instinct to save, to comfort, to heal. Suddenly, you feel like walking away would make you cruel, like you'd be abandoning someone who needs you. But here's the twist. She doesn't keep that vulnerability consistent. Once you reinvest, once you lean back in, she becomes distant again. The vulnerability wasn't meant to build intimacy, it was meant to reel you back in, just as you were about to free yourself. And because men rarely want to feel like villains, this tactic works almost every time, trapping you in cycles of rescue missions. Then there's the pedestal reversal. At the beginning, she makes you feel like a king. She compliments you, admires your ambition, praises your qualities. You feel like you found someone who sees your value. But once you're hooked, she flips the script. Suddenly, she criticizes the very traits she once admired. She tells you you're not attentive enough, not romantic enough, not good enough compared to what she deserves. This reversal creates confusion. You start questioning whether you changed or if you failed to maintain her interest. To resolve that doubt, you start working harder to get back to the man she once respected. But here's the truth. You didn't change. The pedestal was never real. It was bait. And when she pulled it away, she knew you'd chase harder just to feel like the man she once convinced you were. Another devastating tactic is the manipulation of scarcity through time. She'll act like she doesn't have much time for you, yet you'll notice she somehow has time for everything else. Friends, social media, casual events. When you ask why she can't give you more, she deflects or makes you feel guilty for demanding too much. This time scarcity makes you feel like you need to earn her availability. Instead of questioning why her priorities are out of balance, you adjust your life to fit into the small spaces she allows. You cancel plans, bend your schedule, and give her the prime real estate of your time while accepting scraps in return. By manipulating the value of her time, she forces you to pursue harder, not because she's truly unavailable, but because she's framed her attention as something you must constantly prove you're worthy of receiving. There's also the use of emotional hot buttons. Over time, she learns your weaknesses, the topics that trigger you, the insecurities you hide, the areas where you're sensitive. She stores that information, not to build trust, but to use it when she wants control. Maybe she brings up your past failures when you start pulling away. Maybe she hints at doubts about your masculinity, your success, or your ability to keep her. These subtle digs don't just hurt, they destabilize you. They create urgency, because instead of focusing on whether she's giving enough, you're now focused on proving she's wrong about you, and so you chase, not because you love her more, but because you don't want her version of you to be true. It's a psychological trap. You're no longer pursuing her, you're pursuing the restoration of your own self-image, which she deliberately attacked. Finally, one of the most effective tactics women use to make men over-pursue is the illusion of scarcity mixed with just enough hope. She'll never fully reject you, but she'll never fully commit either. She might say things like, "I don't know what I want right now," or "maybe in the future." She'll keep you dangling, always thinking that if you just do a little more, she'll finally choose you. This is the cruelest trick of all, because it turns men into marathon runners, chasing a finish line that keeps moving. You pour in months, even years of energy waiting for her to finally reciprocate, only to realize she never intended to. What she wanted wasn't commitment, it was the endless supply of pursuit that came from you believing you were almost there. By keeping you close enough to hope, but far enough to doubt, she ensures your chase never ends. One of the most destructive manipulations that causes men to over-pursue is manufactured inconsistency. A woman who knows how to pull strings won't act predictably. One moment, she'll be affectionate, initiating touch, sending sweet texts, or planning time with you. The next moment, she'll withdraw without explanation, leaving you questioning what went wrong. This inconsistency hijacks your psychology, because the human brain is wired to crave patterns. When you can't find one, you obsess. You replay conversations, you chase clarity. Instead of stepping back and realizing she's deliberately creating the confusion, you double down. You buy flowers, send more messages, try harder to fix what's broken. But what's broken isn't the relationship, it's your perception. She's learned that if she gives you highs randomly, your brain will keep chasing, just like a gambler pulling a slot machine lever. And in this game, the houser always wins, because the more you chase, the more invested you become in chasing, not in seeing the truth. Another subtle tactic is the weaponization of silence. Silence, when used deliberately, is one of the most powerful tools in human interaction. A woman may withdraw communication, ignore your calls, or take hours or days to respond to texts. And instead of seeing it as disrespect, many men interpret it as a test or as a problem they must solve. They chase harder thinking, if I just reach out again, she'll come back. But what's really happening is psychological conditioning. You start associating her silence with danger and her replies with relief. That relief becomes addictive, and you'll do almost anything to get it. Silence makes you feel powerless, and in your desperation to regain connection, you over-pursue. What men fail to see is that silence isn't just absence, it's control. And when you let silence dictate your behavior, you've already surrendered the frame of the relationship. She might also use the false promise of future security to keep you chasing. Phrases like, one day we'll settle down, or when things are better, I'll be ready, are designed to keep you invested in a fantasy. She knows that men, by nature, are builders. Men commit their time and energy to constructing futures. By dangling that promise, she makes you overlook the present, no matter how empty it is. You justify her neglect by saying, she'll come around. You forgive her inconsistencies because you're invested in what you think she'll become. But the truth is, that future never arrives. It's a carrot on a stick, and every time you get closer, she moves it further away. Instead of being with the woman she is, you're chasing the woman she claims she'll one day be. That illusion keeps you locked in pursuit, pouring effort into a version of her that exists only in your imagination. Then there's competitive framing. She'll subtly compare you to other men, whether it's mentioning how ambitious her coworker is, how charming her friend is, or how attentive her ex was. These comparisons aren't accidents. They're deliberate triggers designed to ignite insecurity. A man's instinct when compared is to prove he's better. Instead of questioning why she's disrespecting you by holding others up as examples, you accept the frame and begin performing. You work harder, you buy more, you spend extra time, all to silence the unspoken accusation that you're not enough. But this game is unwinnable because she's not really measuring you against others. She's using the idea of others as leverage to extract more. And the more you play into it, the more she realizes she can control your behavior simply by making you feel replaceable. Men who fall into this trap end up exhausting themselves, not to build love, but to outcompete ghosts. Finally, one of the most effective manipulations is emotional reset. Just when you're burned out, ready to walk away, convinced she doesn't care, she pulls you back with a sudden surge of love bombing. Out of nowhere, she's affectionate again, calling you, complimenting you, initiating intimacy. You feel relieved, thinking, she's finally back, she's finally realized my worth. And for a while, everything feels good again. But what you don't see is that this was calculated. She sensed you were slipping, so she hit the reset button. By flooding you with affection temporarily, she erases your doubts and convinces you to reinvest. The cycle begins again. You pursue, she withdraws, you chase, she rewards, you stay hooked. This is why so many men spend years in relationships that go nowhere. They're not in love with the woman, they're addicted to the resets, the rare moments of reward that convince them all the pain was worth it. One of the darkest tactics she may use is the redefinition of reality itself. When you bring up her contradictions, her inconsistencies, or her manipulative behavior, she twists the narrative and makes you question your own memory. This is gaslighting at its core, subtle enough to make you doubt yourself, but powerful enough to keep you trapped. You think, maybe I did misunderstand her tone, maybe I am too sensitive, maybe I did overreact, and as soon as you start doubting your own perception, you become more dependent on hers. You chase harder, not for her affection this time, but for clarity. You want her to confirm that you're not crazy, that you're not losing grip on reality, but that's the trick she won't. Instead, she keeps you in a haze, always seeking her approval, just to validate your own thoughts. Once you're there, she doesn't need to chase you. You're already stuck in her world, fighting for the ground beneath your own feet. Another tactic that drains men into over-pursuit is the exploitation of empathy. Most men with good hearts want to care, want to provide, want to ease a woman's burdens. A manipulative woman knows this and exaggerates her struggles to keep you invested. She'll tell you stories of how unfair life has been, how others mistreated her, how no one has ever truly loved her. And you, with your empathy, step in as the savior. But notice her problems never end. The more you give, the more new crises emerge. You're not just dating her anymore, you're carrying her emotional baggage, her past wounds, and her present chaos. And the worst part, the moment you stop, she flips the script and says, "You don't care about me." So you over-pursue, pouring more effort, not because you're receiving love, but because you don't want to be seen as cold-hearted. What you fail to realize is that empathy without boundaries isn't love, it's slavery dressed as compassion. She may also employ subtle devaluation of your identity. Not outright insults, but small digs over time. Why do you always dress like that? Are you sure that's the best you can do? You're not like other men. Sometimes you're just too much. These comments are disguised as casual observations, but they chip away at your self-image. And when your self-image takes hits, your instinct is to overcompensate. You work harder to prove her wrong, to earn back her admiration, to show her you're still worthy. But every time you climb back up, she finds new ways to cut you down. It's death by 1,000 small comments, and instead of realizing she's the one pulling you down, you believe the lie that you need to try harder. The cruel irony is that she never intended to admire you in the first place. She intended to control you by keeping you always slightly insecure. Another manipulation is withholding closure. When things begin to crumble, instead of giving you honest answers, she leaves things vague. She says, "I just need time," or "I'm confused right now," or "It's not you, it's me." These phrases are designed not to end things, but to keep you hooked. You're left in limbo, wondering if she'll come back, if you should wait, if there's something more you could do. And men, by nature, hate unfinished battles. You crave resolution, so instead of moving on, you keep investing, trying to win back her clarity. What you don't realize is that closure isn't being denied accidentally, it's withheld deliberately. Because the longer you're in limbo, the longer you keep chasing. And the longer you keep chasing, the more power she has without ever needing to fully commit. It's not love, it's a trap built on your need for answers. The final, most dangerous manipulation tactic that makes men over-pursue is weaponized hope. She sprinkles just enough kindness, just enough attention, just enough intimacy to make you believe she still cares. You're always one step away from thinking, maybe we can fix this. Maybe she does love me. Maybe she just needs time. That hope is the strongest chain of all, because unlike fear, which pushes you away, hope pulls you closer. It blinds you to the truth that her actions contradict her words. It convinces you to ignore red flags. It persuades you to sacrifice more, forgive more, endure more. You don't leave because you keep thinking the breakthrough is around the corner. But the truth is brutal. She never planned on giving you that breakthrough. She just learned that hope is the easiest way to keep a man chasing, even when there's nothing left to catch. What makes all these tactics so dangerous is not just their cleverness, but how they play directly into a man's deepest instincts. Men are wired to fix problems, to solve puzzles, to protect and to provide. So when a woman creates confusion through hot and cold behavior, when she withdraws affection, when she manufactures scarcity, you don't see it as manipulation, you see it as a challenge. You think, if I just do this one thing differently, if I just work harder, if I just prove myself, she'll finally open up, finally give back what she once promised. But that's the trap. The more you try to solve her puzzle, the more she controls the game. And instead of asking the right question, why am I playing a game in the first place? You double down on chasing the wrong prize. It's not about her loving you, it's about you trying not to lose. And in that mindset, you've already lost yourself. Another element often overlooked is how society normalizes these tactics. Modern culture tells women their feelings are facts, their impulses are valid, and their choices are beyond reproach. Meanwhile, men are told that if they don't chase, they're weak. If they don't endure, they're not real men. If they walk away, they're quitters. This cultural double standard makes manipulation easier because you're not just fighting her games, you're fighting the invisible pressure of social conditioning. When she ignores you, society says, keep trying. When she devalues you, society says, be more romantic. When she withholds affection, society says, she's just testing your patience, prove yourself. Every narrative pushes you to over-pursue, not because it works, but because it keeps you locked into roles that drain you while elevating her position. Unless you break free from this conditioning, you'll think suffering is proof of love, when in reality it's proof you've lost control of your frame. Here's the truth. Most men never realize a woman cannot manipulate a man who is indifferent to her validation. The more you need her approval, the easier it is for her to twist you into chasing. But when your self-worth is anchored in your mission, your vision, your values, suddenly her tactics lose their grip. If she withdraws affection, you don't scramble, you keep moving. If she goes cold, you don't panic, you focus on your life. If she dangles hope, you don't bite, you measure her by consistent action, not words. And that shift changes everything. You stop chasing, not because you don't care, but because you recognize that real love doesn't need to be manipulated into existence. The moment you no longer need her validation to feel like a man, you've already won the game she was trying to play. Because you're not in her frame anymore, she's in yours. This is why some men appear magnetic without even trying. It's not that they're better looking, richer, or more charming. It's that they refuse to play games. When a woman tests them with silence, they don't flood her phone. When she withholds affection, they don't beg. When she compares them to others, they don't compete. They dismiss the insult and keep their focus. This steadiness unnerves manipulative women because their usual tactics no longer work. Instead of pulling harder, they lose interest and move on to weaker men who will play the game. But the ones who stay, the women who actually respect consistency, who crave stability, those are the ones worth keeping. And the irony is that by refusing to over-pursue, by rejecting manipulation outright, you attract the very women who value reality over fantasy. That's the paradox. The less you chase, the more genuine connection finds you. So here's the ultimate truth. Manipulation only works on men who are asleep to their own value. If you don't know who you are, you'll chase every test, every silence, every breadcrumb of affection. You'll think love is something to earn, when in reality, love is something to exchange. But once you wake up, once you anchor yourself in your mission, in your strength, in your clarity, you stop playing games altogether. You stop being the man who begs for attention and start being the man who commands respect. And in that shift, everything changes, because you'll see manipulative tactics not as signs of love, but as red flags. You'll stop asking, how can I win her back? And start asking, why would I want someone who plays games in the first place? That's the moment you reclaim your power. And the moment you reclaim your power is the moment you finally walk away from the trap of over-pursuit for good. Let's take this further, because men often underestimate the long-term damage of falling into over-pursuit. When you repeatedly respond to manipulation by giving more, you rewire your brain to believe that love equals effort and suffering. You start confusing chaos with passion, inconsistency with intensity, and pain with meaning. That mindset doesn't just keep you stuck with one woman, it follows you into every future relationship. You walk into new connections already primed to chase, to fix, to prove. Without realizing it, you become addicted to the very cycle that's destroying you. And that's why some men, even after walking away from one toxic woman, find themselves repeating the same patterns with another. They never learn that true love is steady, not erratic. Until you break that addiction, you'll keep mistaking manipulation for magic, chasing women who drain you, while ignoring the women who would actually respect you. Another overlooked consequence of over-pursuit is how it corrodes respect. Respect is the foundation of attraction, and when a woman sees you bending over backward to win her, she stops valuing you. Think about it. If you're willing to accept disrespect, if you're always the one reaching out, if you're constantly proving yourself, what does that signal? It says you need her more than she needs you. And the moment she senses that imbalance, her attraction plummets. She may keep you around for validation, for attention, or for convenience, but not for love. That's why so many men are blindsided when the woman they've been chasing finally leaves. They thought their extra effort was buying loyalty, when in reality it was eroding respect. The irony is painful. The harder you chase, the less she values you. Here's where the psychology gets deeper. Many women don't even consciously realize they're using these tactics. For some, it's instinctual. They test, they withdraw, they manipulate, not because they sat down and planned it, but because it works. Over centuries, women have learned that they can extract attention, effort, and commitment by playing with men's instincts. So while it feels personal to you, it's often just behavioral conditioning at play. This is why awareness is critical. If you see these patterns as individual quirks, you'll keep trying to fix her, but if you see them as systemic, as part of how female psychology expresses itself under modern cultural influence, you stop taking it personally. You stop saying, "Why is she doing this to me?" and start asking, "Why am I allowing myself to play this game at all?" That shift puts the responsibility back where it belongs on you. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop playing, everything changes. The manipulative woman loses interest, yes, but the right kind of woman gains respect. Because the truth is, women respect what they can't control. They may complain, they may test, they may push back, but deep down, they crave the man who refuses to be twisted, who refuses to over-pursue, who refuses to sacrifice his reality for their illusions. That's why men who walk away often become more attractive, not just to that woman, but to women in general. They carry an energy of self-respect, of boundaries, of strength that can't be faked. And women, even if they don't admit it, respond to that energy. It's magnetic, it's rare, and it separates the men who chase from the men who lead. So how do you escape the cycle of over-pursuit? It starts with anchoring yourself in three things: mission, standards, and boundaries. Your mission is the bigger purpose that keeps you grounded. Your work, your vision, your growth. Your standards are the rules you live by. What you accept, what you reject, what you demand from those around you. And your boundaries are the lines no one is allowed to cross, no matter how attractive they are, no matter how much you care about them. When these three are strong, manipulation loses its power, because no silence, no guilt trip, no breadcrumb of affection can compete with a man who knows his worth. And once you live that way, you stop over-pursuing, not because you've lost the ability to love, but because you've gained the wisdom to see the difference between love and control. When you internalize your mission, standards, and boundaries, something profound happens. You begin to radiate a type of energy that can't be faked. This isn't about acting alpha or putting on a front. It's about embodying a calm certainty that says you cannot be swayed by cheap tactics. When a woman goes cold, you don't scramble to win her warmth back. When she pulls the silent treatment, you don't panic. You give her silence right back, not out of spite, but out of strength. When she tries to guilt you into doing more, you smile inwardly, knowing guilt is a weapon that only works on men who don't know their value. This unshakable presence is what separates men who are played from men who are respected. It's what takes you from reactive to proactive. And ironically, once you carry this energy, you'll find that manipulation attempts decrease, not because women suddenly change, but because they sense it won't work on you. The reality is this: women will always test, consciously or unconsciously. It's in their nature to probe, to push, to see if the man in front of them is grounded enough to withstand pressure. But there's a difference between a playful test that strengthens attraction and manipulative tactics that drain your soul. The key is discernment. A test might be her playfully teasing you to see if you're confident, or pulling back slightly to see if you'll stay grounded. Manipulation, however, is when those actions become consistent patterns designed to keep you chasing, doubting, and proving. A wise man doesn't react emotionally to either. He simply observes, measures, and decides whether she's worth his energy. By viewing it this way, you reclaim your power. You stop seeing her actions as commands and start treating them as information. And once you operate like that, you're no longer the one being played. You're the one choosing the game. Here's the truth that will free you. You don't have to chase love. It reveals itself in consistency. Real love doesn't make you guess. It doesn't demand endless proving. It doesn't require manipulation to stay alive. A woman who truly values you won't need to confuse you, guilt you, or pit you against imaginary competition. She'll meet you where you stand. She'll bring clarity, peace, and consistency because she knows her worth too, and she wants to build, not play. When you understand this, you'll see manipulation for what it is, the mark of someone who isn't ready for real love. And the moment you see it that way, walking away isn't painful, it's liberating, because you realize you're not losing love, you're dodging an illusion designed to drain you. And once you internalize that, you'll never chase manipulation again. And here's the paradox men don't expect. The less you chase, the more powerfully women respond. Not because you're being cold, but because your energy communicates abundance. It says, I don't need your validation to feel whole. I don't need your games to feel alive. I don't need to prove myself just to earn love. That kind of presence is magnetic. Women may not admit it, but they respect the man who doesn't bend. They respect the man who isn't shaken by tests, who isn't swayed by moods, who doesn't lose himself in pursuit. And while manipulative women will quickly flee from this energy, the women who are ready for something real will lean in closer. They'll sense the difference, because stability is rare. They'll know they can't manipulate you, and instead of resenting it, they'll value it, because deep down, even women who play games long for a man who won't fall for them. So here's the conclusion. Most men resist, but must embrace. Over-pursuit is never about love, it's about control. The moment you find yourself constantly proving, chasing, or bending, you're no longer in love, you're in bondage, and the only way out is to reclaim your frame. That means anchoring yourself in reality, setting standards that don't bend for beauty, and refusing to confuse manipulation for affection. Once you do this, the games lose all power. The guilt rolls off you, the silence doesn't faze you, the comparisons don't trigger you, and suddenly, you see clearly, the only love worth having is the kind that doesn't require performance. The only woman worth your time is the one who doesn't need to manipulate you into pursuit. And when you finally live by that truth, you'll never be trapped again, because you'll know real love doesn't drain you, it builds you. Everything else, it's just noise.